Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at Galarian Zapdos V. Now, our translation here comes from lovely Antoine Boulet. And what I find amazing here, and Antoine has filled us in with his little nugget, that this was actually revealed on an advert that was only shown in certain parts of Japan, i.e., it was a roaming advert, which if you played the Crown Tundra will make a lot of hilarious sense. And if you want to KO some of the very best Pokemon in the game, but you don't want to use a lot of energy, good news, ladies and gentlemen. This one's for you. Now, if we start off having a look at the basics, we got 200 HP, which is slightly low for a Pokemon V, but not egregious. We will forgive it. We got a retreat cost of 1, which is nice and low and opens up U-turn board and all of that, so that's rather nice. And we've got a weakness here to Psychic, which is not ideal if I'm honest with you. Stuff like Mewtwo and Mew is seeing more and more play lately. Like Mewtwo and Mew is a deck in and of itself, but it's currently being used to bolster decks like Pikachu and Zekrom, so it is not a particularly great weakness to have. But you are a fighting type, so you can use Karate Belt if you are behind on prizes. You can use Martial Arts Dojo to do a little bit of extra damage if you got any basic fighting energy attached to you. You're hitting weakness on stuff like Eternatus, like Pikachu and Zekrom, like Crobat V, all of which is very relevant. We'll get there in a moment. Frankly, it's a pretty gosh darn good time to be a fighting Pokemon. But what do we have here? Well, we've got an ability which is frankly a little bit over the top, silly, broken good. And I'm going to make really sure I read this carefully. The ability says, this Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless energy less for each of your opponent's Pokemon V in play. So, yes, the attack cost is fighting colorless. That looks a little bit expensive, boo, hiss, etc. But if your opponent's got 3 Pokemon V in play, then all of a sudden the attack is 1 fighting energy. Oh. Yeah, that's pretty gosh darn good, ladies and gentlemen. This is a kind of ability which is... it's going to do 2 things. Or it's going to do one of 2 things. It is either going to make your attack really cheap, or it is going to make your opponent play the game in a very different way to how they actually want to play it. And this is kind of fun, because your opponent's going to sit there with a pretty bad hand. But they've got a Crobat V, or they've got a Quick Ball for a Crobat V. So they go, well, that's alright, I'll just play Crobat V. I will use my lovely Dark Asset ability. I will draw until I've got 6 cards in my hand, and then I'm going to draw some stuff, and hopefully I'll draw a supporter like a Professor's Research. Then I can play that supporter, and I'm off and rolling. We've all seen how 1 Crobat V or 1 Quick Ball into a Crobat V can completely turn the game around. This is good. However, your opponent now knows that playing a Crobat V will reduce the attack cost of Galarian Zapdos V by 1 energy. And the thing is, in some decks this will be annoying, in some decks this will be ridiculous. So let's say your opponent is playing a deck focused around Pokemon Vs. Let's say it is a Centiskorch, and this is a really good time to remind you that Pokemon VMAXs do count as Pokemon Vs. Think of them as like a subset. So all of a sudden, your opponent's going to have 1 or 2 of these in play anyway, so now playing a Crobat is just going to reduce it even further. Now, at the moment, this is maybe a bit less of a big deal than it could be, because we've got Dedenne. And at the moment, if you really want to try and avoid it, good news, we've got Dedenne. But as soon as we hit the rotation in the end of August, beginning of September, which bearing in mind is going to be like 6 weeks-ish after this set releases in English, then all of a sudden, Dedenne goes away, and to be fair, all Pokemon GXs go away, so we're just left with Pokemon Vs, and at that stage, this is going to get even better. Like, this is good now, but when we get to the rotation, it's going to get even better. Because essentially, right, if your opponent's got 3 Pokemon Vs in play, your attack cost ends up as 1 fighting energy. This is good, this is cheap. But it's also, for instance, 1 Aurora energy, which is crazy. Or it's, 1 fighting energy that you play because your stadium of choice is Viridian Forest, obviously pre-rotation. or something along these lines. And that's what's so good here. Against the right deck, this can do 170 damage. We'll get to the effect in a minute. It's good, not bad, for a single energy. And it means that you can play one Galarian Zapdos with one Aurora energy, or you can play this in a deck playing Aurora energy anyway, and why not? And honestly, right, if you're playing Aurora energy in your deck, or you are playing any energy that can pay the attack cost, in what world are you not putting one Galarian Zapdos V into your deck? Because if we move on to the attack, we've got Fighting, Colorless, 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 170 damage. Before dealing damage, discard a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So we could have looked at this and gone, oh, well, you know, but the attack says something bad and it's got some big negative. No, it's actually got a positive. Now, the wording here is very, very, very important. And Antoine's awesome at this kind of stuff. Before dealing damage, discard a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. And this is super duper important because of weakness guard energy. Now again, that's going to rotate when we hit the rotation, but we haven't hit the rotation yet. Because weakness guard energy is a colorless energy that says that the Pokemon to which it is attached has no weakness. But because you discard it before doing damage, it means that a deck that's weak to fighting, that's trying to use weakness guard energy to fend off Galarian Zapdos, can't. And against a deck that's fighting weak and has 340 HP, Galarian Zapdos V is going to wreck. And you probably saw it on the thumbnail, but let's make it super clear now. Eternatus V Max. This is about as perfect a counter to Eternatus V Max as you could get. This is as blatant a counter, okay, maybe not quite. This is almost as blatant a counter as the Heatmor from Dark Explorers was to the Durant from Noble Victories. Heatmor for a single energy did 10 damage, but 60 against a Durant. Bearing in mind, Durant can only be printed as metal and grass, so it will always be weak to fire. Although it was specifically for the Noble Victories Durant. And ironically, nobody played Heatmor because Darkrai completely got rid of Noble Victories Durant. This is on that kind of level as a counter. Now, to be fair, it's not only for Eternatus. It works on a whole bunch of other things as well, but clearly when you're up against Eternatus, it is phenomenal. Because you happen to do the exact right amount of damage to get a one-hit KO on Eternatus. And you get rid of their weakness guard energy, which would be their way of trying to play around Galarian Zapdos V before you do damage. And it's a deck where they're going to be playing Eternatus, and they're going to have to play a bunch of Crobat, because in order to do, you know, maximum damage, they have to fill up their bench of 8 Pokemon with Darkness Pokemon. Their draw engine is basically Crobat. So they have to play Pokemon V. You do the perfect amount of damage, and you get rid of a weakness guard energy before you hit them. Against Eternatus V Max, now essentially every deck has a basic Pokemon that they can put in for a single energy that will get a one-hit KO for free prizes. Yep. This is just about as perfect a counter as you are ever going to find. But let's not forget that Crobat V has 180 HP and a weakness to fighting, so you're getting a one-hit KO on a Crobat for 2 prizes, in a lot of decks for 1 energy. If you're against your average VV Max deck, you're not actually going to do all that much. 170 damage, or HP, is really reserved for the weaker Pokemon V. So we are looking at weakness here. So something like a Stoutland V, remember it takes extra prizes when it KOs a basic Pokemon. This is going to be a really, really fun counter to that. And it's not for every single deck, because there are going to be plenty, even post-rotation. You give me your average Zacian deck, and Zacian's fine, right? Because Zacian's going to be playing a bunch of Pokemon Vs, but Zacian's going to sit there with 220 HP. You're not getting a KO, and they will be KOing you right back. Pre-rotation, Martial Arts Dojo actually helps you wonderfully here, because if you're using a basic fighting energy as opposed to, say, an Aurora energy, then Martial Arts Dojo will, if you're behind on prizes, put you up to 210, which gets a lot of Pokemon Vs. Stuff like Center Scorch goes down, and you can add something like a Vitality Band to go up to 220, and then you will get stuff like Zacian, which is awesome. But that's pre-rotation. Pre-rotation with Martial Arts Dojo, I adore it. Also pre-rotation, if your opponent's got free Pokemon Vs out and you use Karate Belt, you can actually attack for free, which is kind of awesome. But again, I think that is a rare usage. Essentially, what we've got here is the perfect counter to any Fighting Week Pokemon, even up to and including free prize Pokemon VMAXs. Something like a Snorlax VMAX here that, again, is a deck that really wants to build up their bench. This is going to be a great counter to Snorlax VMAX, which admittedly might not be great in Standard, but is pretty good in Expanded. If you're not making the most of the ability, it's still colorless energy, so you could play this in a deck playing Welder to accelerate energy. You could play it in basically any deck that with any kind of energy acceleration, or you could play around with stuff like Turbo Patch. I don't think that's the best way to play it, incidentally. I think there is a niche which is filled by Galarian Zapdos, and the niche very simply is, you're playing Pokemon Vs and are weak to fighting, Zapdos Smash. It's a 5 WotC card. It's an absolutely no-brainer 5 WotC card. Because even when you're not against a deck that's weak, you'll still get Crobat. So in all, and bearing in mind post-rotation, everyone's going to be playing Crobat. So pretty much every deck, you're going to be able to steal at least 2 cheeky prizes, you would imagine. But when you've got a perfect counter to a whole bunch of awesome decks, this is just brilliant. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.